Excavators are shaving off layer after layer of sand to reveal a trench that is dozens of feet wide. Egypt has started a project to release the sea toward the border, and they are doing it in total silence.
Egypt has announced a tender for the construction of 21 new desalination plants, with 28 international consortiums bidding for the project.
For starters, the pipeline stretches for miles and can move a staggering amount of water every single day. But here's the catch. This isn't connected to the local grid, and it operates on its own.
A $2.5 billion plan to build 17 desalination plants that will be powered by solar energy.
The world is watching to see how this move affects the neighbors, and the tension is rising as fast as the water. This is the moment everything shifts. Hidden water pipeline. In July, a massive convoy of heavy machinery crossed the Egyptian border. Excavators, huge pipes, and high-pressure pumps moved into the Gaza Strip to cut through the desert and let the water in. This move was not announced to the public, and for a long time, people only saw the dust clouds from the digging. The work has not stopped for a single day or night, and Egypt really did start digging through the Sinai to bring water straight to the border. But get this, the deeper they dig, the more questions people have. Locals say they can hear a low rumble beneath the sand, as if something big is moving down there. Nobody understands exactly what Egypt is trying to uncover, or what will happen when the project is fully finished. What most people don't realize is that this is happening in a place where every 100 feet is under strict control. Right now, dozens of excavators are at work, and no one is saying who exactly gave the order to dig. Officially, everyone calls it a humanitarian mission, but there is just too much heavy equipment too close to the border for it to be a simple plumbing job. This isn't just construction anymore. It feels like a major operation. Under the blazing sun, the work never stops. The crews keep shaving off layer after layer of sand as if they are looking for something hidden. When the digging was done, the entire border turned into a trench that is dozens of feet wide. On satellite images, a new strip appeared running right along the edge. Egypt has announced that the water is finally ready to flow. In August of 2025, they launched a new route where desalinated seawater from plants in Rafah began flowing straight into the region. The project is called Chivalrous Night 3. It was presented as a way to help people, but it was built like a secret mission. There are guarded convoys and inspections on every single part of the pipe. The pipeline is cut off from other networks and runs all by itself. This makes it look like it was not just made for aid, but for something much bigger. So, here's the deal. The pipeline stretches about 4.7 miles and can pump more than 2 million gallons of water every single day. It is also connected to a reservoir that holds around 1.4 million gallons. The pipes run from the Egyptian border along the coastal road and end near the city. Thanks to this, the plant that opened in February can now produce up to 2.6 million gallons per day. Things used to be very different. Most of the water used to come from an Israeli company or local wells. Now this new project is designed to provide about 4 gallons of drinking water a day for each of the 600,000 people living there. But it is important to understand that 4 gallons is the bare minimum for survival. Right now, most people only get between 0.8 and 1.3 gallons of water per day. That is barely enough to stay alive. The situation is urgent, and the water is finally moving. But the water might be hiding something even more dangerous than the desert heat. Vanishing water source. The area we are talking about is one of the most crowded places on the entire planet. There are more than 512,000 people for every 4 square miles. Everyone is packed into a very narrow strip of land. Since the conflict started, the population has dropped by about 160,000 people, which is roughly 6%. Some were lost, some fled, and others were moved to different areas. The destruction is massive. Homes, roads, and businesses have been turned into piles of rocks. But behind all of that lies another disaster that is much older and harder to see. The water is simply disappearing. It is not just dirty, it is almost gone. Usually, a crisis means people need food or doctors. But here, even dirty water is a luxury. Clean water is just a fantasy for most. The only natural source of fresh water is a huge layer of groundwater beneath the sand. About 98% of all water comes from there, The rest is bought from outside. But the problem is that this water source was never meant to take care of so many people. It is being pumped out 3 times faster than it can refill. It can safely give about 15 billion gallons per year, but people are taking out more than 50 billion gallons. As a result, 97% of the water is not safe to drink. Since the military campaign started in October of 2023, more than 80% of the water infrastructure has been destroyed. 2 years of conflict have turned a shortage into a total catastrophe. Fuel and electricity are very hard to get, and without them, the plants that clean the water cannot work. Damaged pipes and broken lines make it impossible to deliver the little water that is left. The underground water is now polluted with sewage and trash from the ruins. According to the people trying to help, most wells have been destroyed or cannot be reached. 60 wells are known to have been demolished. The plants that take the salt out of the water have shut down. Today, nearly 2 million people live in tents and camps with no way to wash themselves. People say they walk miles every day just to get a tiny bit of water to drink. But wait, does Egypt not have its own water problems to worry about? New water route. Egypt is actually going through some very serious water issues of its own. The country now uses more water than nature can provide. Almost all of their fresh water comes from the Nile River, but the population is growing so fast. The weather is getting hotter, and everyone is using more water. This means the deficit will only get worse. If they do not do something, the economy will suffer. Egypt has been warning the world about a giant dam being built in another country on the Nile. They believe that if the river flow drops even by 5%, it would be a disaster. Egyptian officials call this dam a threat to their very existence. They have even hinted that they might go to war if their access to the Nile is in danger. They talk about old treaties from 1929 and 1959 that say they have rights to the water. But those agreements were signed a long time ago without everyone's permission. So, the situation is getting very tense. And here is where it gets confusing. If Egypt is running out of water, how can they share it with someone else? The answer is simple. They are not actually giving away their own fresh water. Egypt does not pay for the pipeline, and they do not use their own reserves. The whole system works in a very clever way. The water comes from a special plant built by the United Arab Emirates. It sits right on the coast, just a few minutes from the border. The plant takes seawater straight from the Mediterranean, filters it, removes the salt, and sends it through the underground pipes. Egypt loses nothing. Their fresh water stays safe in the Nile. There is plenty of seawater for everyone. The Emirates are not just building a pipe. They are running a massive operation to keep people alive. They started by fixing old wells and pumps to bring water back to the neighborhoods. The main goal is to reduce pollution and give people a safe place to live. They have already delivered nearly 132 million gallons of water. Every day, big trucks deliver supplies to families living in tents. They are even drilling new wells to find more sources. In May of 2025, they started a new phase to fix 28 wells that were not working. This should help 700,000 people. In September of 2025, another convoy arrived with 22 water tankers and 5 ambulances. But selling this water for money would change the game entirely. Brine disposal crisis. Now imagine if someone decided to sell this water instead of giving it away. If it was a commercial project, people would have to pay to fill their jugs, or the government would have to pay and charge people through taxes. There is already a pipeline like this between Turkey and Cyprus. It is the only underwater pipe of its length in the world. It was finished in September of 2014 and brings fresh water from Turkey to the island. Cyprus has always struggled with drought, and their rain has dropped by 2.5 inches over 70 years. This pipe supplies about 20 billion gallons every year. Half of it is for drinking and half is for farming. The pipe is made of strong plastic and sits 820 feet deep under the sea. It cost $450 million to build. Back in 2015, the water was sold for a very low price, but the cities sold it to residents for more. By 2022, the price went up. Both sides liked the deal because Turkey made money and Cyprus got water. But the situation we are looking at now is different. Profit is not the goal here. If the Emirates tried to sell the water, the whole world would call them greedy. There is another big question, though. When you take the salt out of seawater, where does all that salt go? It turns into a thick, salty liquid called brine. If you just dump it back in the ocean, it can hurt the fish and the plants. The plants near the border try to mix it with regular seawater so it is not too strong. But scientists found out that we are making 50% more of this salty waste than we thought. It is enough to cover the entire state of Florida in a layer of salt 1 foot thick every single year. There are 16,000 of these plants worldwide, and they make 9 trillion gallons of fresh water. Most of this is happening in Arab countries. Saudi Arabia and the UAE produce more than half of the world's brine. This waste can make the Red Sea and the Mediterranean much saltier. Because the brine is heavy, it sinks to the bottom and can eliminate the life that lives on the sea floor. Greece has over 100 plants, and Egypt has 81. No one knows if the sea can handle all this salt in the long run. And if the pipe ever breaks, the damage could be seen from space. Future border conflicts. The sun in this region does more than just heat the earth. It bakes the silence into the landscape. But beneath that silence, protected by only a few feet of shifting dunes and sun-bleached soil, runs a lifeline that is as fragile as it is vital. When we ask, what happens if something hits the pipeline? We aren't asking a hypothetical question. We are asking about the inevitable. In a landscape where the horizon is frequently punctuated by the plumes of military strikes, the risk isn't a statistical outlier. It is the daily reality. By October of 2024, the sheer scale of the kinetic energy released upon this land was staggering. 40,000 targets hit, 70,000 tons of explosives dropped. To put that in perspective, that volume of ordnance exceeds some of the most infamous urban battles of the 20th century. In such an environment, the concept of safety for infrastructure is an illusion. A pipe buried in the sand is not a bunker, it is a pressurized artery. One heavy vibration, one stray shell, or even the secondary shockwave from a nearby strike could tear the composite material apart, turning a source of life into a catalyst for chaos. We have seen the violent physics of a pipeline failure before, and the results are never contained. In April of 2025, a massive 6-foot-wide main burst in a densely populated urban center in Pakistan. It didn't just leak, it exploded upward. The pressure within these systems is immense, and when the containment fails, the water behaves less like a liquid and more like a physical projectile. In just minutes, a torrent of water flooded homes and parking lots for a radius of 3,000 feet. It possessed enough force to sweep away cars like plastic toys and flip heavy furniture through the windows of ground-floor apartments. The tragedy wasn't just the immediate flood, it was the paralyzed response. It took hours to find the right valves and shut down the flow, leaving thousands of people to watch their entire lives be submerged in brown, silty water. If the pipeline near the border bursts, the scale might be smaller in terms of diameter, but the human cost would be magnified. Here, people aren't living in reinforced concrete apartments. They are living in tents. A burst wouldn't just wet their floors, it would wash away their entire shelters, their meager belongings, and the very ground they sleep on. Consider the 2024 crisis in Greece, where an entire island lost its water for days. The initial panic led to dark rumors of sabotage and underwater explosions. Divers were sent into the depths, expecting to find evidence of a deliberate attack. What they found was arguably more terrifying. The pipe had simply reached its limit. Age, environmental pressure, and the constant hammer effect of fluctuating flow had caused a catastrophic crack. These systems are inherently fragile. When a community depends on a single straw for its survival, their entire existence is tethered to a piece of engineering that can be undone by a single faulty weld or a shift in the tectonic plates. The danger of a leak isn't always a dramatic geyser. Sometimes the threat is silent and subterranean. When a high-pressure pipe leaks underground, it performs a process known as internal erosion. The water carves out the soil from the inside out, creating piping voids that grow larger with every passing hour. In the sandy, unstable soil of the border region, already traumatized by the weight of heavy military vehicles and constant construction. This is a recipe for a swallow hole. These sinkholes can appear instantly, devouring anything above them. There are documented cases in the United States where accidental ruptures of underground sources led to the spill of 24 million gallons of water into sensitive ecosystems. In one instance, a company was fined over $3 million for ruining a wetland they couldn't possibly fix. In the desert, fixing nature is an even more abstract concept. Once the soil structure is liquidated and the subsurface is hollowed out, the land becomes a trap. For the families living in tents directly above the pipeline's path, a leak is a death sentence for the ground they stand on. The shadow theories. Is water just the cover? While the official narrative focuses on humanitarian relief and the desperate need for hydration, the sheer scale and placement of this project have birthed a collection of wild theories that whisper through the camps and the halls of intelligence agencies alike. In a region defined by deception, many wonder if the water is merely a secondary objective. Some military analysts suggest the pipeline serves as a massive, improvised listening device. Modern fiber optic sensing technology, known as distributed acoustic sensing, DAS, can be integrated directly into the lining of a pipeline. This technology turns miles of pipe into a continuous microphone. By monitoring the vibrations in the water and the surrounding soil, the operators could theoretically detect the sound of tunnel digging, footsteps, or vehicle movements miles away. In this scenario, the water isn't just for drinking, it's the medium that carries the sound of the enemy to a central monitoring station. There is a darker theory regarding the pipeline's proximity to strategic borders. Some suggest the system is designed with intentional failure points. If an incursion were to occur, the pipe could be remotely ruptured to create an instant, impassable mire. By saturating the sand with millions of gallons of water in a matter of minutes, the hard desert floor would turn into a slurry of quicksand, effectively trapping heavy machinery and infantry. This turns a humanitarian asset into a liquid wall that can be triggered at the press of a button. Under the guise of laying a water pipe, have operators laid something else? The trenching required for a pipeline is the perfect cover for high-speed fiber optic cables that are shielded from satellite detection and electronic warfare jamming. As the world watches the water flow, a shadow network of data could be pulsing alongside it, connecting command centers or even facilitating a dark web of communication that bypasses the traditional, easily monitored cellular towers. Perhaps the most cynical theory is that the pipeline is an experiment in sovereignty via tap. By becoming the primary source of water, the provider gains a level of control that no army can match. It is the off-switch theory. If the population becomes entirely dependent on this single line, their behavior can be moderated without a single shot being fired. The threat of a maintenance shutdown becomes a more effective tool of compliance than a checkpoint. In this view, the pipeline is a leash, disguised as a gift. There are whispers that the process of pumping high-pressure water into the ground is actually a form of active seismic mapping. By observing how the pressure waves travel through different layers of the Earth, engineers could be creating a high-resolution 3D map of the subterranean landscape, identifying hidden bunkers, storage facilities, or natural aquifers that were previously unknown. The water acts as a sonar for the deep Earth. The project has been completed without a catastrophic failure, so far. The engineers celebrate a feat of logistics, and the people celebrate a glass of water that doesn't taste like salt or dust. But as the system expands, the danger densifies. When people are in survival mode, the luxury of environmental concern is the first thing to evaporate. They don't care about the long-term salinization of the soil or the risk of a sinkhole next month. They care about the thirst of today. This desperation is the perfect veil. It allows for the rapid construction of infrastructure that might otherwise be scrutinized. We have to wonder if we are missing a key detail in this story. Is this truly a triumph of humanitarian engineering? Or is it a new way to draw an indelible line in the sand? A pipeline is more than a tube of steel and plastic. It is a statement of intent. It is a physical manifestation of who holds the power over life's most basic requirement. As the pressure builds inside those walls, so does the tension on the surface. Only time will tell if this move brings the cooling relief of peace, or if it is merely the fuse for a much larger, more fluid disaster. The desert has a way of burying the truth, but water has a way of forcing everything to the surface. Do you think this water project is actually a secret way for Egypt to gain more control over the border? Is it possible for a humanitarian mission to survive in a war zone without being destroyed? Let me know what you think in the comments, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more.